A while ago, I happened upon some interesting videos thanks to my YouTube feed. You've probably heard of the Backrooms since you've clicked on this video, so I'll keep the explanation relatively brief. The Backrooms began with this mysterious photo of an office building bathed in fluorescent lights, showing an empty, surreal workplace with all of the furniture removed, likely during relocation. But the oddly transient nature of the aesthetics struck many viewers and brought the concept of liminality, defined as relating to a transitional or initial stage of a process, into the mainstream. The haunting, almost creepypasta-esque element of finding abandoned places and documenting them in their pestilent state is oddly appealing, to the extent that it's spun off into other subgenres, with my favorite one being the beautiful yet terrifying pool rooms concept, particularly perpetuated by the highly talented Matt Studio's video concept, in which a man walks around a light-bathed area that looks like a flooded alien mall at times, before ending with him getting lost in a dark, convoluted area with countless identical doorframes. This euphoric experience, which combines dream and nightmare, is often accompanied in creepypasta videos by melancholic songs you might hear in disturbing visual novels like Song of Saya, or nostalgic yet ominous shows like Serial Experiments Lane, and often aim to instill a sense of dissonant comfort in the viewer via nostalgic association, commonly experienced by suburban kids who were very acquainted with the warmth of lush-carpeted neighborhood homes. I was really intrigued by all of these found footage-styled videos, to the point that I was hoping someone would make a game to give me the chance to experience this type of dissonant horror for myself, but unfortunately most of them have been low-quality asset flips in which the developer's understanding of the Backrooms is simply, let's stick the player in this dimly lit, cramped office space with low ceilings and tight hallways. But I always like the videos where the protagonist is walking around a huge anomalous area with their camcorder as they explore their surroundings and hope to find some sense of familiarity, or ideally an exit, so I was pretty disappointed when all of these games turned out to be really similarly uninspired horror games where you run away from scary Gary's Mod next bots with your friends in a tiny area.
Yeah, get out of here. Oh, you want to go?
There's been some dispute in the Backrooms fandom, with most preferring outright survival horror, with threatening monsters known as entities stalking the protagonist or player, and a growing minority that prefers the quiet paranoia found in Matt Studio's content. An Icelandic game developer known as Isarl decided to take a whack at recreating this type of experience using the Unreal 5 engine, and I fell in love with it so much that I decided to become a patron and make a brief video talking about it. Now, at this point, a lot of horror YouTubers have already covered this game in the form of a brief Let's Play, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit more in depth and share some thoughts and observations, especially since horror is one of my favorite genres, and I would desperately love for more aspiring game devs to step up to the plate and give this flavor of horror a try. The complex found footage is an extremely simple little game demo of sorts that leaves quite a lasting impression. The title screen is just a static TV, and once you begin the game, you take on the perspective of a corporate employee before we're shown a number of shots in the building, owned by an organization called Magwave. It looks as if the player falls asleep on their desk before no-clipping into the Backrooms, and as you gain control, it becomes clear that visual fidelity and good audio design are at the top of this game's priority list, especially with the creepy audio distortion as soon as the player sprints for a moment, which sounds almost like some creature lurking around the corner and watching you. You're simply thrust into this open-ended area and left to your own devices as you have to navigate to the next level, which is very difficult given that there aren't many distinct landmarks to help you get your bearings, but eventually you'll happen upon an elevator before it takes you to the next section. The other areas include a small pool rooms section, a dark neighborhood that eventually gets bathed in red light, a big mall area with tons of open space, a claustrophobic hotel hallway that pays homage to Matt Studio's work directly, and a frigid building out in the middle of nowhere, before concluding with the viewer getting dumped back into the real world. It had some really nice highlights for me, like this giant room of light where all the sound effects drop out as you get close to it, which made me feel like I was being watched. The appeal of the pool rooms for me is how pure and relaxing it is, but the structures and layout of the environments evoke a very specific type of fear, as if I'm in some top-secret alien cult spa, and I'm running the risk of encountering a group of humanoids that will capture and kill me if I were to encounter them. I especially love the neighborhood comprised of empty houses, and I particularly enjoyed the homes underneath the highway-looking overpass. I initially thought these doorway textures were some sort of weird portal to another default yellow Backrooms area, which I think would be cool to suggest suggest to the player that this alternate dimension has looping gateways to previous levels. I also kind of wish there was a subtle jump scare in which the homes had entities hiding in the attics, which would slowly move out of sight should the player focus on them. Lack of jump scares or entities was a frequent complaint from reviewers, establishing a common rift between players who want something different versus players who want the gameplay equivalent of a roller coaster thrill ride. Isarl ended up patching the game and making some pretty big changes, which I told him I thought were 2 steps forward and 1 step back in some ways. I'm pretty sure he got a lot of feedback that the initial Backrooms area was too difficult to spatially parse and opted to make it a bit more linear to help out the players who were getting lost. But overall, he said it's basically a free little experiment, and he recently announced his official sequel and complete game titled The Complex Expedition, which he said would be completed in a pretty timely fashion now that he's more acquainted with the Unreal Engine and knows how to use it more efficiently. He also told me the full story synopsis outline that I'm not going to share here, but I just wanted to flex that I have insider knowledge and that I'm very confident this game will have an amazing execution that will manage to blow the original demo out of the water, so please do look forward to its release. As mentioned, the patch changed the game and added some new areas, such as the beginning area being much more focused, with less paths to explore and more general dead ends to ensure players wouldn't get too overwhelmed, as well as changing small aspects of previous levels, including adding rooms with god-tier texture models and some extra snippets to reference classic viral Backrooms images previously seen online, most notably the 2 rooms next to a staircase and whatever you want to call this area. The initial build of the game had the pool rooms end in this section with an elevator taking the player to the next stage, but the patch added a new, longer section with what looks like a bunch of room-style showcases with doors in the background, almost like they're meant to attract renters, ultimately concluding with an empty pool and transitioning into the same hotel hallway as before, with the addition of new corridors and an oddly relaxing set of rooms only visible through multiple windows. The main Backrooms area also has a small set of floorboards you can look up into, while the red neighborhood was given more visibility than it initially had compared to the pitch black darkness in the first version. And the final area in the snowy section has a few more rooms added, such as this Spanish titled room which has something to do with teen fashion. As you complete the game, we're shown a camcorder falling out of a trash vent before the Mag Wave Research Institute is shown, suggesting that the player character got left behind in the Backrooms, and teasing at the sequel while some intriguing ambient music plays. And even though I've shown you this game mostly in its entirety, I still encourage all interested parties to download this free game and explore it yourself, because the sound design and atmosphere really set it apart from the other Liminal games, even if it has a memory leak that a lot of players are reporting uses almost 100% of their graphics card. The only real critique I have of the complex is that the appeal of the Backrooms videos on YouTube is the fact that you're witnessing someone document and explore an unprecedented liminal space in the typical found footage vein, so the creator can leave most of the environment unexplored and give the viewer the sense that this doorframe, or this one, or any of these, all potentially lead to a completely different parallel dimension or branching hallway. But by having the protagonist explore specific areas and ignore others while the viewer watches, it allows a sense of creative control that keeps players from ruining it for themselves. It's often the reason why games will lock the player into a cutscene to ensure that they see the important thing, since giving players too much control can ruin the creative vision if they choose to sprint through the area or jump around like a cokehead when they're meant to be walking slowly and examining their surroundings. The reality is that not every dark hallway can go on forever and ever, creating dynamic environments that will be unique to every player, as most hallways end abruptly. The shots that took inspiration from classic backroom scenes are much more compelling as a simple photo, since anything could be in that room or up those stairs, but once the player is given control and chooses to explore these areas, it's a bit of a letdown that almost all of them have nothing to offer, exploration-wise, or are simply a series of barren rooms with nothing interesting in them, but I really can't think of any way to improve it, aside from having procedurally generated areas to give the sense that the backrooms are truly endless. This is probably one of the shortest videos I've ever made, but I wanted to gush about how wonderful this horror genre makes me feel. Isarl is also a pretty cool and humble guy, and we talked about our mutual love for the uncanny genre of analog horror, which often has a very foreboding and ominous sense of fight or flight, as the narrator or text displayed on screen will advise the viewer of the threat of imminent bodily harm enacted by an unknown being called an alternate, which is essentially a violent doppelganger that imitates friends or loved ones in an attempt to murder and replace you as a lookalike, with big ones such as the Mandela Catalog, Blue Channel, and Channel 58 all serving as a sort of public broadcast emergency system to warn civilians about a growing threat and to lock their doors to avoid a home invasion. Just the usual type of existential fear that becomes more striking as I get older and have more things to worry about. There's something about ambiguous fear and the fight-or-flight response to it that really intrigues me as someone who grew up with lots of horror games and is always looking for new twists on the genre. I have a lot of faith in Isarl's future content and encourage people to show him support, as even once he gained mainstream support from people like Markiplier posting his playthrough, Isarl still barely has any support on his Patreon, so I've left a link to that in the video description if anyone is feeling generous. I haven't done any horror game reviews in a while because, put simply, a lot of the games coming out tend to either be a little too experimental or arcadey for my taste, or they're just some scuffed Unity game slapped together with a bare-bones user interface and a multiplayer feature that draws in most players who just want a quick, cheap thrill where they can scream with their friends. So if you want me to review a horror game that you think didn't get enough attention, feel free to mention it in the comments section so I can look it up. And on the off chance that any of you watching this video are aspiring game devs, feel free to leave your Discord handle in the comments or shoot me an email via my About section on my YouTube channel, and I can potentially play your game and give you feedback. I'm definitely holding out hope that someone will come along and give us a Backrooms-esque survival horror game with randomly generated surrealist environments and cleverly scripted enemy AI that roams around the map and keeps you on your toes. But for now, we'll have to make do with the selection of games currently on the market. Definitely check out the Complex as soon as you're able, and go show Isarl some love by wishlisting the Complex Expedition on Steam, or I will find you.